Welcome, students, to Monk Meditation, the show about monks in the world of Warcraft.
Is haste worth it? We're going to talk about it. Paragon levels make it into World of Warcraft, Brewmasters are shuffling even more, and Monkyo sort of raid tests coming up on Monk Meditation, episode 67.
Here's your host, Chai T.
Hey guys, welcome to Monk Meditation. My name's Chai T. I'm from Airy Peak, US. Currently a Mistweaver because I went Brewmaster and found out I was terrible about it, so Mistweaver and Woodwalker combination-ish kind of thing on Convert to Raid team with Rolling Thunder. I'm joined today to discuss Monk information, of which there is kind of sort of some of it, a little bit. Well, let's find out about it. Let's go to Monkyo. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing excellent. My name is Monkyo. I play Mistweaver, and because I like to weave mists, and I do that in the game. Sorry, I was mocking your opener.
Yeah.
But I have a personal project that I'm not quite ready to reveal. Maybe later in a couple shows afterwards, I'll have some more information on it, and that's kind of what I've been doing in the meantime. That and some other cheating on WoW with another game. It's a dirty secret, but we'll keep it going.
Moving to Air. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. Hi, I'm back again. Yeah, sorry, I had a thing last time. Apologies. But I'm here now. It's awesome. This week is great. So I have a live studio audience today. Like, Air wife is somewhere in the room.
Yeah, I've been podcasting with you. Back there? I've been podcasting with you for 2.5 years now, and that's the first time I've ever seen her.
Yeah. Well, so I'm not making it up.
Right. I thought it was like
have a wife, which is even better because she decided not to divorce me after I shaved off that facial hair I had, and she came to Wisconsin. This is great. Okay. So I haven't had a lot of WoW time recently because I've been busy, but I have managed to break the 800k mark in gold.
Yay!
I've been paladin tanking for Cat on Fire, the raid team on Convert to Raid US Airy Peak.
They've been
We're
doing
working
really
through heroics
well,
right
too.
now. Yeah.
So
we're hoping
this
to get an
week
Archimon
on Paladin
on
perspective.
Right.
Yeah. No alpha yet.
Yeah. Speaking of salty, let's go to LeBlue. How you doing, sir?
Doing good. My voice miraculously has recovered in anticipation of podcast day. Thank goodness, because I've been fighting this cold now. I guess for 2 weeks, if you put together the actual cold and the whole can't speak thing. But we've been raiding. We've been, I think, struggling more on re-clearing stuff than actually doing progression. Archimon, we just passed our 100 pull white marker, and we're kind of sitting around 60, 55%.
Ooh.
So we're working on it. It's eventually.
You'll make it. You'll get there.
We've already got bets on how far, and some of them are a little higher than others.
Right.
Just a margin. But other than that, just been kind of keeping track of the few little trickle changes we've had and trying to keep the Chi Burst thing updated and playing an absolute crap load of Monster Hunter because I just started that a few months ago, coming up on 300 hours now because reasons.
All right. Well, we have some alpha news to talk about. Monkyo,
Yay.
I know that you kind of got to do some raid testing.
Yeah, kinda is not a part of it. I did all the raid testing.
I
was
have
there
to ask,
from the first pull.
I have to ask before you get started, is the blue bar working as intended? Is the loading bar working as intended?
Bar working as intended. It is. If its intent is to keep people off the alpha, it is working as intended for the vast majority of people who are invited.
Blood launch.
Press it, ship it, Goldmaster. You guys are Blizzard. Skip that out there.
Yeah, I mean, so it was there. So they had trouble getting the build up, getting the build stable, and who knows what the root cause of the issue was. But their solution was simply to artificially raise the cap on people that they allow on the server to some number, which is just such a terrible band-aid solution. and it was so obvious that they did it. It's kind of insulting that they
But
did
it works
honestly.
so well for Warlords of Draenor. I mean, what could be the
It
problem?
worked just fine for the last couple of testing sessions, which we were completely blown away by the way. Like, we shouldn't see this as a low. We should see this as the norm. Well, we shouldn't see this as the norm, but by now we see this as the norm, right? It's not ready for testing. But the past testing sessions were like really good. Like the Nathedra test, right after that Spiron, was there anything else? The Ursoc test, all that went smooth. And so we were like, this is great. This is how you're supposed to do it. And then this one comes along, and it's like, well,
so much for that. Back to alpha.
Yeah, back to normal alpha.
Let's go back to alpha land. Right. Well, speaking of alpha land, there was some information on Twitter that came out about artifact weapons. And this pertains very well to monks because a lot of players, myself included, play multiple specs. And since we have multiple roles, and it doesn't even matter about multiple roles anymore, because even if you're a mage and want to do fire and arcane, you have to do 2 different weapons. So for us, and for everybody really, you're going to be able to obtain your second artifact fairly early into your level up experience, is what they say.
Hooray!
Right. There was also a question about whether you're going to have to do LFR or raids, essentially, to complete your artifact. They said that you can unlock all of your traits through purely solo content, though it may take longer to do it that way than if you grouped up. However, they did say there is an important artifact upgrade quest line that may require some LFG or LFR content to complete. So, what are you unlocking? Is that for not for the traits, but for the thing up at the top? You think that's what it is?
So
Like
if
glyphs?
you look at the current alpha build, that cap isn't there anymore. Like, that number isn't there anymore. But you're still locked to a certain number of traits. Or the 110, you're not. But in the non-110 server, they don't have the number anymore, but you're still locked to a certain number of traits, which I think they're doing that manually. So I don't know if that number is actually going to be, that number in the top left. I don't know if that's actually going to be a thing once it's released. My suspicion was that it was just something they were using on alpha to kind of track how they're how many traits they're releasing at any time, but it's not there anymore. And on the 110, you can get all the traits. On the normal realm, you can only get, I think it's 10 traits, something like that, 10 or 11 traits. So who knows? I think, if it's anything, it's unlocking more traits that you can get, which I don't like that they are going to lock it anyway. I think you should just have access to everything at any time, and it's up to you to just spam farm for artifact power to get, whatever.
I understand why they'd want to gate it, and I'm okay with them gating it slowly, but you should still be able to get a lot of power each step. But I understand them wanting to gate it so that, people don't have everything unlocked in 3 months and then complain about, I don't have any content to do. So that's
if artifact
why
power was the content, then there's a serious problem with the expansion. But
when they say LFG LFR, are they talking like current Valor that you can only get at an LFG LFR, or do they actually mean real raid content?
I think it's probably like dungeons and.
It would be
They
lovely.
definitely mean like normal dungeon.
Yeah,
or
if it
normal
works in
raids.
LFR, it should work in a regular raid.
You would
Valor
think.
doesn't do that for whatever reason that I'm not
Right.
at all
The
upset
Valor's
about, but
Valor's a different. That their intent with that is go do other stuff than raiding, and that's how they're.
raiding.
They
They're-
might still do that,
they're
though,
dragging
because
stuff.
you want to incentivize people, raiders in particular, to go out and help other people with this content. And that's
We're
the
already
whole
helping
point.
my teammates. We're helping each other.
Right.
I've only
You're
have so
helping
many helps to give.
10 to 30 people, okay?
They
But
want
you could
to
help
abandon your
ton
current
of
friends,
other
and
people.
find new friends every time you play. Every time you play, they just want you to abandon your friends and make new ones.
Right.
Every time. There you go.
But for when the game starts, when the expansion starts, it's really not a hard time, even for people that are brand new coming in, to find a decent team to run heroic dungeons with and LFR with. But as you move on, once the raiders get everything they need out of that, they stop running it unless there's incentive to do it. And Warlords was like that for a long time until they came back out with Valor. And then it got me to play for like 3 weeks, and I was like, I can't be bothered. So it obviously was
and another
incentivizing
chore
that much. Right.
that you had to do. Like, it wasn't an avenue to a different road to achieve goals that already existed. They added a new goal and said, all right, here you can do this now as well. And it's just one extra hoop you have to jump through in order to get to Legion. Like they just keeping you, all right, look, just keep playing. Here's some more stuff. You can get stronger and you can kill the bosses in 30 seconds as opposed to 45. It's
right.
I don't know, whatever. I don't really like that. I prefer just the content to be challenging for a long time so that people don't get bored. Like it's the content, so they nerfed content like weeks into it. Like I'm talking about like the mythic raid content and even heroic raid content. They nerfed it weeks into progression. Like some people hadn't even killed the first couple of bosses, and they nerfing like Gorfiend and what's his name, Manaroth, and just like just wait, take it easy.
Right.
Let the content breathe, and then they won't have to add things like Valor to artificially give you more content.
And don't
you can get more
nerf-
content just doing the old stuff.
Well,
Don't
talking
nerf
about
Windwalkers
right
in the middle of High Mall.
that would be helpful. Speaking of artificially adding content, it seems like Paragon levels have made its entrance.
Yes, my favorite part of Diablo is grinding Paragon.
So
I'm so happy it's coming to WoW.
Someone in the dojo indicated it seemed a lot like Crystallized Fell as well, that type of mechanic. So what we're talking about is that every artifact weapon has had a new 20 rank trait added to it. So far, pretty boring. Tank, you get 0.5% hit points per rank. Mistweaver or healers will get 0.5% healing per rank. Damage will get 0.5% damage per rank. But
we're missing 3 things.
what's that?
Brewmasters are missing dexterity, movement speed, and energy cap. Windwalkers are missing vitality, energy cap, and movement speed. And Mistweavers are also missing vitality.
I get it.
I see what you did there.
I thought Paragon was leaving for Legion.
Man, we got lots of puns in this one.
Oh man!
This episode is
too soon.
This
We
episode
lost
is
a good
Monkey-O
group.
approved.
I feel so bad about that.
So,
that's a
what do
topic on its own.
What do we think about this? A, is this a placeholder? It doesn't sound like it because it looked like they actually gave them
No,
names.
I think
No,
honestly they
I
just
think they're putting that in. It sounds
they're
like
just
that.
pulling stuff from all over. Like I don't know, we screwed up in Warlords. Let's just what do people enjoy for X months at a time? All that stuff from Diablo. Just get it out of here.
We like becoming more
We can
powerful.
get it all in here. I mean,
This is one of those. Well, look, you have something to keep chasing because
Right.
if I understand this right, when you put an artifact trait in, the next one costs a little more. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
Or like artifact power. So
That's right.
how much will it go to get that rank 20? And it'll just be sitting there like, come on, you want that 0.5, don't you? You want
Yeah, I
it.
don't
Come
know.
on.
I'm still
Well, that
working
might
for that
not-
seeker of knowledge archaeology thing. I understand having a little carrot there. It seems impossible, but you're going to want to try for it.
That might not be. I think Chai said this earlier. Someone maybe in Twitch that said it. That might not be artifact power related. That might be an item that you get from a boss that you've killed, over and over. Or, I don't know, something. We don't know. We have no idea what this new passive is, and it's like again, it's their way of artificially nerfing content, way too early. Like that's something they could add months after content's been released or something. When the new tier is released, that's when you nerf the old content so that people can go see it. You don't nerf the content before anything else is even available to challenge the players that are still, doing that content.
We
But,
wouldn't want people to be unhappy that they can't kill a boss. We need to make
They
sure
just-
content is nerfed and beaten down so that all players can experience the content. Because we don't want to anyone feel left out just because maybe you're not quite up to snuff. Maybe you need a little bit of time. No. Let's just nerf this boss for you so you can move on to the next one and hit that brick wall too.
Just losing my mind with the stuff they're adding. When people were saying, they're making World of Warcraft like Diablo, and that was only centered around like the items, right, the loot, where
They
people
had
were saying
the
it's-
Greater Rift dungeons as well.
I know,
Yeah.
but the first thing, they only added one thing, and it was with the items. People said, "Oh, this is Diablo now with the items. Oh, it's just Diablo
With getting like
of WoW."
Warforged and
Mhm.
gems
Yeah.
and stuff
Yeah,
like
the
that.
tertiary,
And I was
the
like,
random
nah,
stats.
they're not doing that. That's ridiculous. That's just one thing they did. It was, something to spice it up. And now it's just everything. They're just piling the rest of it on. They're like, well, this worked, sort of. People
Hey,
don't
everyone.
like it, but it's still there.
You want updates to Diablo 3 content? play World of Warcraft.
As soon as they let our pets loot stuff for us and WoW, I'm on board 100%.
Hunters can already do that.
Fair enough.
Oh, that's right.
They probably grabbed that
no-
from hunters.
I mean, Blue's right. There's not going to be another Diablo expansion. There's just going to be more WoW expansions that are going to have all the stuff.
All the
that
Diablo stuff,
had.
yeah. Oh man.
You're going to see Wyatt Chang posting on the WoW forums within a couple months. It's just
X-Class, the Barbarian.
unbelievable.
Right.
Dude. I mean, they're taking names. Granted, it's still Blizzard's games, but they're taking ability names directly from Diablo. Like it's
well,
it's not
to
even
be fair,
subtle.
the monk class took a
shameless
lot
at this
from
point.
WoW too, so they're just
I
making
know,
a
but if you look
return.
at, like the barbarian skills.
Uh-huh.
What was it some of the mage skills? I think it was. It was just like it's not even subtle. It's just straight up. We don't know. Just here. These look fun and creative. We'll just use some of this. And if it works, great. You know, if it's fun and interactive and it challenges you as a player, I don't care where you pull it from. If you want to pull mechanics from, you know, the Hello Kitty Adventure Island, whatever, that if it's
Game.
fun, that's fine.
That's game.
I don't care. But if you're just putting it in there for the sake of it being new and different for WoW, and it's not fun and it's not interesting, or it contradicts your design goals, which we've already seen happening, like with the Prot Warrior stuff. I know someone was talking. I listened to somebody talk about Prot Warriors, and one of their goals was like they want to reduce the uptime of active mitigation, but with a certain talent and setup, they allow Prot Warriors to get like 100% of time on their shield block, and it's like, how do you let this through? Like, I don't know.
Well, it's just
they're
like
not
with
thinking-
the Brewmaster stuff. They were saying that they don't want them to be self-sufficient with their heals, and yet
Right.
they just added something where those giant effing ox orbs that heal
no.
you for a massive amount will give you
Like,
an
what, half
absorb
your health?
shield.
Oh, did they really?
Yes.
It's
Let's
true.
let's move
It's-
into that. LeBlue, let's talk about these artifact
Oh
changes.
man. Okay, so we got a few changes. All right. So first off, obstinate determination. So Ox Orb overhealing is granted as an absorb shield. Mind you, these orbs heal for at least 25% of your hit points. So if you have, so here we're thinking right now that you can't just walk over these at 100%. That would be retarded. Like, let's be.
If it gets to
completely
99%.
But if you're 99%, that's at least, because of artifact traits, at least a 24% of your health shield. So if you have 100,000 health, that's a 24k shield. Because you know how guard was really broken and tanks having absorbs like
That
that.
sounds great.
There is actually a good bit to it in that it makes it less likely that we'll waste gift to the Ox Orbs, which is actually a problem with them right now because high movement fights, we tend to move around a lot and you leave them behind and you can't use them all for whatever reason. This will help alleviate that a little bit, but I also see just some hilarious things happening with this as well.
Right. Yeah, this is a complete rebuild of
it's
guard.
just-
It's
no,
so weird.
yeah, it's unbelievable that they. And it's you look at Mistweaver's the same thing. They took out fist weaving because it was like, you know, they didn't like the gameplay. They said it was unintuitive and blah blah blah. And what do they throw in? They throw in Rising Thunder and heads up. We're back to it. It's like, I mean, it's a little bit different in the reason you're using
But it's
it,
more powerful. It's
I mean, I love the talent. I'm glad that it's there, and that again, that's a whole nother discussion. But you know, they make these bold statements at the beginning of the expansion to sell the expansion to you, and you buy it or you pre-order it, whatever, and then they get through it and they're like, oh, we can't actually deliver on any of those goals, so backtracking. See you later. You know, it's I don't know.
I mean, that's what iteration is about, right? That's allowed, or is this
It
like
is.
beyond
No,
what
for
you would
sure. It's
expect?
just-
Only in our fantasies.
Okay.
It's just don't make such grandiose claims like you're gonna do these things that sound really good, and all their claims sounded really good, like lowering active mitigation uptime for tanks, making healers care about mana, making sure DPS have simple but interactive and not simple, complex but not an overabundance of buttons for your rotations. And you look at Demon Hunters, right, the brand new class, and in their first, granted, it's their first iteration. I'm not exactly sure how they are now, but they were literally a 1 or 2 button spec, and
Yeah.
it just doesn't inspire a lot of faith if that's their kind of initial go
Right.
at it, and they have gotten too much better at all that, and now they're backtracking on all of that. It seems that's all.
All right, well, let's talk about some of the other traits that Brewmaster are getting. I love how we're getting all these Brewmaster updates, but still no Brewmaster to play. So,
Right?
all right.
No idea what they want to do.
So Wonder Special. I had obviously a lot of us actually have a huge problem with it, the RNG factor of it. Cool flavor, infuriating gameplay from first blush. Obviously, didn't try it, but first blush, it just looked like it'd be really infuriating. Changed. Remember Dizzying Haze? We're kind of getting that back with Flaming Keg, which, as the wording indicates, it's a target. So you target something and throw it. So it's like a missile, if you will. We're not sure if it's splash damage or anything. Don't know yet. On a 1.25 minute cooldown still. So we're not going to be Kite Kings with Flaming Keg, but
right. But it's good to pick up ads when they come out.
It is an answer to our very weak ranged threat.
Right.
You did just say splash damage with throwing a keg, and thank you.
There may or may not be. We don't know. We have no idea. It doesn't indicate that.
But it's a keg, so there's
I would
understand
assume.
this.
I would assume with Flaming Keg.
You would assume.
Yeah, I would assume the effect will be it's going to splash and burst fire out. That would be the assumption.
See. I'm not saying it does or doesn't for sure until we see alpha. So in how many times did I say bad things about Jennifer Lawrence? Next year we'll find out.
Dude, you going? Nothing good is going to come from your discussion with that.
Moving on.
Please.
Remember Fortification that made us the most godly of enraged tanks ever known to mankind? Yeah, that got nerfed as everyone was like, this is going to get nerfed.
Yeah.
It is now a flat 30% more dodge, which that's a pretty healthy chunk of dodge.
That's a good chunk of dodge, yeah.
Of 20% more stagger, 20% more damage reduction, and 20% more health. That's a pretty daggum cool thing. And the help plays with mastery and the whole thing. Cool. Dragonfire Brew no longer reduces brew cooldowns. It just is a flat damage reduction. So,
but now the tooltip correction definitely sounds like you're going to light yourself on fire. That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
You're going to take damage, but take less overall damage.
I have fantasy issues with that, but arguing fantasy doesn't get you anywhere because it's subjective. So
it's like you take an artifact. You take an artifact trait. That's like you sip brew, and you normally breathe fire like an expert, and then now you sip fire and go and just fire all over yourself.
It's coming out of your pores now, so it makes more sense. It's just you
I
take
don't
it upon yourself or into yourself, and it just
dude, those Szechuan peppers, man. You gotta watch out for that.
Time constraints. We couldn't make a unique animation for this, so we're just going to use Immolation Aura. Just pretend it's not though.
It's not Immolation Aura at all. Okay. All right, so
Immolation Aura with the damage reduction. There you go.
Let's go over the Windwalker changes. Artifact weapon. Oh wait, we already went over those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cuddles.
They got the 0.5% damage per rank trait.
So strong.
That was it.
Going to be ridiculous.
They did have a couple of changes with PvP. I know.
Yeah, but I don't pay attention to those notes as much. Sorry,
right.
PvPers.
I'm kind of exactly the same way, actually. So, let's see what else we got. Mistweavers. We got some big changes.
Yeah. You want me to take this? Or
yeah, go for it.
Right. So, one of the talents they added recently was Rising Thunder, and it caused your Rising Sun Kick to reset the cooldown on your Thunder Focus Tea. And so immediately when we saw that, we were like, all right, this is great gameplay, but it has a ton of synergy within your artifact traits. The two big ones were, there was a trait called, I think it was Harmony and Focus. Harmony and Focus, the trait gave you one extra spell on your Thunder Focus Tea. And so every time you would reset Thunder Focus Tea with Rising Sun Kick, you would get 2 spells. And when you compared that to Focus Thunder, which gave you 2 or 3 spells with the trait every 30 seconds, Rising Thunder was just that much better. Also, you had a trait, Celestial Breath, which you still have, but it had no cooldown on Celestial Breath. So if you could get more Thunder Focus Teas off with Rising Sun Kick, it just added more healing. It just made Rising Thunder way too good with just those 2 talents. You know, that doesn't even consider all the talents that affect Renewing Mist, because you can get more Renewing Mist off with Rising Thunder than with Focus Thunder. Anyway, so they recognized that, and they said, okay, we need to indirectly nerf Rising Thunder by changing some of these traits and I think a talent. But they took away Harmony and Focus, which gave you 1 extra TFT spell, and they replaced it with just a passive trait that says your Essence Font now does increased healing, because we didn't have an Essence Font increase trait
Right.
in the artifact. So it's a boring solution, but it's fine because Essence Font is actually really powerful and it's a good spell. So more healing on that is fine. And then they gave us, I'm going to kind of skip a few here, but they gave us this passive trait, which is the first trait that you can get. And I think it's called like Way of the Mistweaver or something like that. And it says 10% increase on 1 point, 10% increase on Enveloping Mist. But I couldn't select it. It wasn't selected on the 110 server. So I don't know if that's just a placeholder. I hope it's a placeholder because there's another trait that's 3 points that gives you 10% healing on Enveloping Mist, the exact same effect. So I'm hoping that that first trait that you pick up is actually something interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be. And speaking of interesting, I want to talk about Shaylun's gift because this is a gift for me. This is something that I've been wanting forever because I've always hated healing spheres. I think it's terrible because the mastery was always something that you relied on other players to be smart to pick up. So I've always wanted to be mist instead of a condensed orb and have that mist kind of travel around and hit other players and stuff like that. We have that now. So Shaylun's gift now has two different aspects of it. One of them you use and it will kind of poop out mist and it kind of floats around, and if it touches people it will heal them. But then you also get one that when you use it, it will take all that mist, channel it in, and you pump out a huge heal to somebody. And that's really exciting. I'm really excited for that.
It is a huge heal too. Like if you use it so the mechanics behind it are thus. You spawn these mists. The mists don't do anything. They just sit there and they're just aesthetic. You can see them and you're the only one that can see them. They spawn they spawn once every 10 seconds. If you're in combat, you don't have to cast heals for them to spawn. They just passively spawn. And that's the whole interaction with the mist. And you can get up to 12 stacks. You can't get any more than 12 stacks after 12, which is, I think, was it 2 minutes? Yeah, it's 2 minutes. They'll start disappearing. So you can get a max of 12 stacks on your heal. It's a pretty significant heal. I mean, it's gigantic. I think you can crit for like 50% of someone's health, maybe even higher, with like enveloping on the target, with Mistrap taking and all that stuff. It's a very, very big heal if you let it stack. But the thing is, it's free. It's free healing, so you make sure you use it. I actually wasn't using it on the alpha raid testing because it was just something I totally forgot about from the previous testing sessions.
It was brand new, so
just worthless. Well, we had the spell still, but the spell was just
useless,
really annoying
too,
and didn't fit anywhere. Yeah, I mean, it was a great heal, but it was just so boring. I just forgot about it. But it's free, has no cooldown, and so you just got to use it intelligently.
Right.
Really, really good change for that. I'm happy about that.
Yeah, it fits into the fantasy extremely well. It's something we've been wanting for a long time. So kudos. Well done.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention with the Rising Thunder, more nerfs to Rising Thunder. They for Celestial Breath, which is it's just a heal whenever you cast Thunder Focus Tea. They put a 30-second cooldown on it only if you have Rising Thunder talent selected.
Oh, so that way you can't just chain them, because that would be a lot of AoE healing.
And it's a slight technical thing because Thunder Focus Tea only has a 30-second cooldown anyway. So why would they just say, okay, 30-second cooldown only if you have Rising Thunder? Because it doesn't just have a 30-second cooldown passive. It's only when you have Rising Thunder equipped. And so you look at the first boss in the raid testing that we did just recently. He has a passive, or there's some buff that you get that makes your cooldowns come up faster. And so if you take like Focus Thunder or Mana Tea, then your Celestial Breath, or I should say your Thunder Focus Tea, will come off cooldown faster, and you can actually use Celestial Breath more than once every 30 seconds. But if you have Rising Thunder, you won't be able to use it more than once every 30 seconds. So depending on how much healing, the tuning of Celestial Breath, Rising Thunder might be an HPS loss in that situation, which I don't think you'd want to use it for that boss anyway. But again, different discussion.
Right.
And then so 2 more things for the artifact. One was they removed a passive trait, which is just passive damage reduction. And they changed it to where while you channel Soothing Mist, you get damage reduction.
Right.
Now, granted, I think it's 10% while you channel, increasing as you put in points to it. But it's just like Soothing Mist. My argument against this is not only is Soothing Mist just, people don't enjoy it. I don't care. Whatever. It's a thing. I don't feel one way or the other about it. But the problem I have with this interaction is that if you're taking damage that you would want to reduce, you're probably wanting to heal as well. And if you're wanting to heal through that damage, you're not casting Soothing Mist. You're casting like an Essence Font or some Vivifies or some Realms. You're just not channeling Soothing Mist during that time.
It would be
most
good.
probably.
I mean, you can do it on certain encounters when you know there's going to be AoE raid-wide damage.
But that's my point, is that if there's raid-wide damage incoming, you're going to want to be casting heals that actually heal the raid and not Soothing Mist, which heals one person for, a really pathetic amount.
Well, let's say everybody is kind of topped off. It's kind of like a burst
That's fair, yeah. And, our cooldowns are kind of... We have two options between Diffuse and Dampen, and those are pretty significantly nerfed, which I'm fine with. I mean, I think they could have kept Dampen the way it was and just nerfed Diffuse a little bit, because Diffuse, I think, is just promotes kind of bad gameplay in relation to mechanics, just like, Cloak of Shadows and whatever the mage thing, Evanescence, I think was called.
Right.
And
that's why they took your Zen meditation away.
I don't want to talk about that. I really want that spell.
But
anyway,
let's move into the Mistweaver changes that have happened. The actual changes, not the artifact.
Oh, right, yeah.
So Essence Font, they were talking about Essence Font. They wanted to tune it a little bit. So here's our first pass on tuning. So what they've done is they've more front-loaded the healing. So the initial burst will do more, and the heal over time will do less. And so I think that's good. Front-loading that is really good, especially with the artifact traits boosting that up. What do you think, Michael?
Makes it a lot better in dungeons, for example.
Right.
When damage is just coming in and you need to heal the raid or the group, it just makes it that much better. Before, if damage was coming in, you kind of had to wait for the hot to go away for it to even be useful, and you're only hitting 5 targets, so you're already below the minimum for it to be truly effective. I think it actually does overall less healing now. I have to look at the math again, but the fact that it's more front-loaded makes it better in dungeons.
Right.
It's still a really good spell, though. So
yeah, minor tuning changes happen to Renewing Mist as well. Slight mana cost reduction, and they also fixed it where when you cast Life Cocoon, it will proc Soothing Mist as well. That was one thing that was a direct targeted one that wasn't casting it, so that's a good good change. Brewmaster's got some changes as well.
Hey. So first and foremost, that mitigation thing, that active mitigation thing. First off, any and all defensive buffs from our stance are gone. No armor buff, no flat damage reduction buff. Gone. Keenan Lover actually found that out and pointed it out to us. To go along with that, our base stagger is now up to 35%, up from 10.
That's huge.
As our baseline stagger. Yeah. So you have a 40% base stagger if you take high tolerance, which now is a fantastic talent in that final talent tier, as wonderfully, awfully boring as that tier is. And then Iron Skin Brew got a slight nerf. Doesn't matter after the baseline buff. It's now 40% instead of 50%. So with high tolerance, once again, you are sitting at 80% stagger. With Fortifying Brew, 100% stagger, meaning you are immune to physical damage, which is insane because stagger can't kill you. Stagger will drop you to 1 hit point. You are immune. You will not die.
And the boss kills you.
Then
and the boss will kill you with like 1 damage per second pulsing AoE. That'll kill you. But it's kind of crazy. And then finally, Breath of Fire is separate from Blackout Strikes and has a 15-second cooldown.
Okay, so they
now,
broke up
instead
that.
of them being on, they're no longer on the same cooldown.
Which is good because Breath of Fire seems to be something that they are aiming towards people actually using now. As now in Warlords and in Mists, you took it off of your bars, but now they're adding.
No, it's supposed to be like your Consecrate, your D&D, I guess.
Right.
Pretty standard model with the tanks now.
Something like that.
You use it now because it looks awesome.
Yeah,
This is
you put yourself on fire like an idiot.
I want that animation
or
for
Demon Hunter.
the Celestial Breath trait, because right now it says you breathe mist or something, and all it does is you stand there and the breath's coming out of your mouth, sort of. But I want that, kind of look, because that looks awesome. The Breath of Fire animation is it's so good. That would be so great.
Yeah, it's pretty
You
cool.
just stand there like blowing mist out your hand or something.
So
It just would look so much more interesting.
Fire,
I'm a
your
magician.
mist.
You turn around.
So, LeBlue, have you looked at the math since these changes came out? Are we going to be actually using purifying brew now that we're
Yes.
staggering a lot more?
Yes, and that's helped immensely by the fact that we generate so much brew. Like, we're talking stupid amounts of brew. We're talking over the course of a 10-minute fight, over 110 charges of brew with light brewing, which is basically Ascension, which is basically the one and only way Ascension's good, and that's because Black Ox Brew is worse, and then Secret Ingredients is even more awful, which is impressive all on its own. So, but you're going to have brew flowing out your ears, especially with the fact that right now, as we know it, it doesn't stack like Shuffle does now, where the duration extends itself. It's kind of like a lucid brew where you can't use Iron Skin until the previous Iron Skin falls off. So even just by virtue of generating so much brew, you're going to have to shave some off with Purify anyway. So don't worry, we're purifying, and the question is how much, and it's probably going to be a lot, especially if they make a slight change with haste coming, potentially, maybe possible, which will be a funny thing all its own that we'll talk about.
Speaking of secondary stats, there was a lot of information coming out about secondary stats. They posted a full blue post on that.
Thanks, Sparkle Dragon.
Right. So this is going to be interesting. So what their goal is to have a higher boost in secondaries to begin the expansion and then a slower gain thereafter. So they want you to spend more time in what they call the sweet spot, where your rotation feels good and not so much time at the beginning of the expansion struggling and so much time at the end of the expansion as gods. They want it to be a lot more time kind of in the middle.
You know what raid tiers were? You know what raid tiers were really good? Those middle raid tiers, that second content patch that we always get. You know, in Warlords, oh wait, never mind. Go on.
Blackrock Foundry was kind of that little sweet spot, I think.
Black
No.
Rock.
No.
You get out of here, sir. It was awesome.
Right. So let's talk about the secondary stats, kind of what you're going to be aiming for each of the specs. And so let's move Windwalker first so Eric can actually talk a little bit.
Yeah, I'll read the Windwalker stuff. So for Windwalkers, the increased haste baseline will put us in that sweet spot of high APM actions per minute much earlier in the expansion. And so, like, now that we don't have multi-strike, it seems that the stats will actually have a good place in the Windwalker arsenal. So, no longer do we have to shun haste. No longer do we have to shun mastery. Hino Lover's doing a lot of work on this, and he's indicating that haste won't be heavily valued. And it seems like we're going to have that old adage of haste until comfortable. And then you can work on the other stats. So you got the 3 haste bears. You know, you got this one with too much haste, and you got the one with the too little haste, and you got the haste right in the middle. And that's the bear you go hug. And it's good. Your actions per minute feel good.
Yeah,
it's where you want to feel.
Hino Lover just put in the dojo as well that mastery is, and this is going to feel so weird, mastery is the one we go for.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So Coltrane, remember back in Mists, when Coltrane was saying, go heavy mastery, he was just being prophetic, I guess.
He's ahead of his time.
Ahead of his time.
Coltrane, you were
Ahead of his time
once
by a
again
few expansions.
ahead of your time.
By an expansion, yeah.
Right.
He's probably used to this by now, honestly. I mean, he's always been ahead of everybody in time
Right.
because he was a mage and he used to use alter time or something
Eventually,
like that.
you'll be right.
Time warp. So mages ahead of the time. That's what we knew. So all the mastery. So Chai, what is all that mastery going to do for us then?
Mastery is combo breaker. So when you use an ability that is different than the ability you used before, you will get a percentage increase of damage based off your mastery. So it's going to be fairly simple, especially with our sweet spot haste, to keep those new combos going. And so you're going to have pretty much a flat damage increase throughout the board. So that's really, really good. Anything that translates into a direct damage increase like that, you got to go with mastery.
So we're going to be able to reuse the old show title of Master Your Mastery again?
Yes. We'll be able to bring that back.
Great. Go
And
Windwalkers,
actually,
we got this.
what's funny is I think LeBlue is mastery a top stat for Brewmasters.
right now or in
in Legion? I know right now it's really good, but
our it's right now initially defensively physical melee swings. Yes, we're brewmasters are weird. You want me to go ahead and talk brewmaster stats a little bit? Is that my segue?
Well, what I wanted to talk about is I wanted to see, is mastery kind of the monk stat now? Because I know Mistweaver.
I can't say that right now.
Okay.
I don't know. It's looking that way, but there's a lot going on.
All right. Well, anything you want to finish up, Air? Anything you want to talk about Windwalker stats on?
No, I mean, like, the what we have now, which is the silliness of go away, that other stuff, we all, our main stats going away.
Right.
So we got to relearn everything. We got to take all of our knowledge and forget it. We got to go on a 3-day bender, get ready for Legion, and come back ready to fight. And
I honestly think that all of the stats for Windwalker are not terrible.
That's really good too.
Right. There's no stat that we're like, crap, we got this on our gear, get rid of it. All of them have their uses. Haste is apparently the one that's kind of the least useful, but you're never going to get to 100% APM. I don't think I think it's possible. I think Lover did the math, and near the end of the expansion, we might hit it, but that's going to rely on fights like Patchwork. You're going to have a Patchwork.
Don't worry, they'll only have 2 raid tiers. You'll be fine. You don't reach it.
Oh, I mean, right now, the math shows that versatility is a great stat for us. The old adage in the Legion, the Warlords adage of that it's a boring stat, but it does work really well for us. We get to actually pick something other than versatility.
Yep.
That's awesome. That means we can affect our stats. Like, our stats directly change how we want to do stuff.
I'm annoyed that multi-strike got cut, but versatility remained. It's like that's one of the most annoying things in Legion so far for me.
Oh, we heard you like crits. So
multi-strike was just baby crit. That's all it was.
But it had a lot more fun to it than versatility.
I mean, if you have scrolling battle text like I do, sure, I agree with you.
Yeah, just pop, numbers popping up.
And yet, all the time in my stream, I get, who has scrolling battle text anymore? It's like, I do. Shut up.
I do. I like seeing the numbers. Shut your mouth. I never actually look at the numbers, but I like seeing them. Be quiet.
I like XCT because it tells me when I'm taking damage when I'm not paying attention.
Right.
Versatility actually is not. I actually like the stat because it gives you that option to spec into some more damage reduction. I know the immediate reaction is, who would ever spec into more damage reduction
Mythic
over,
Raiders?
Crit and exactly. Well, so on Iron Maiden Mythic Progression, we had an issue with a mechanic that we were trying to solve, and we realized this mechanic would just hit this one person for so much damage. We knew this is how we wanted to handle mechanic, but it would just drop this one person. And so what we did was we loaded up one of our warlocks with all of this. I think we put stam gems in his gear. He had versatility and chance on everything, and that let him survive it by the smallest amount. Like everything counted, all the stamina, all the versatility, all the item level he had. But if he didn't have that versatility, he would have died to it. And so him being able to swap over to versatility allowed us to do that mechanic and kill that fight very quickly. So it's nice to have. I like that more than multi-strike isn't going to do that for you. Like, multi-strike's not interesting like that,
I wish versatility had more damage reduction. So you could actually feel it for a given. You swap out a piece or you put a versatility gem in. It's something you can actually feel, and it makes a worthwhile swap for that single piece, and not that you have to swap everything over. So
the thing is, go ahead. But like on the 110 realms, I think I have something like 27% versatility, which would give you, 13.5% damage reduction. That's a lot. Like, from a PvP perspective, that too much more than that, and you really kind of hurt the game a little bit. But
that's almost a minor defensive cooldown at that point.
It is. It's really, really good. I mean, it's just passive 13% damage reduction. Granted, it's full PvP gear and it doesn't affect it doesn't help your damage or your output, that much. But that's a sacrifice that a lot of guilds, especially Mythic Progression guilds, are willing to make. Like, avoidance before it was nerfed was the best stat. Like, if it had avoidance on it, you took that piece because avoidance worked on pretty much everything. And then they changed it to avoidance working on pretty much nothing. Right. And now it's so worthless that nobody thinks about it. But for Hellfire Citadel, avoidance was the way to go because it was so amazing.
All right, well, let's move into Brewmaster secondary stats.
So it's very, 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 very blatantly obvious that they're not quite sure how it's all going to pan out. Multi-strikes obviously being removed, so we have 4 stats. We have mastery, haste, crit, versatility. Versatility we already went over. It's boring stat, but we know what it does, and it's going to stay consistent. Its biggest problem usually is it takes a lot of rating to get that 1%. So that's still going to be a thing. It's still probably not going to be bad for us. We know what mastery does. Mastery does the dodge thing. It's pretty good right now is what it's looking like. It has this little bit of offense. Crit, we don't know what it does yet. We don't know if it will ever do anything yet. We have no freaking clue. I don't know if they have any freaking clue. Paladins have something with crit, and they freaking hate it. It resets their Shield of the Righteous charges. It's awful because you don't actually do anything. It's just auto attack crit shield. So maybe it will see auto attack crits give us an extra second of brew charge because we don't have enough of that clearly. We need more. Then there's haste. Traditionally, probably the most awful stat for brewmasters. Outside of literally stacking the deck entirely in its favor in Hellfire Citadel to make it okay. Like, it's actually potentially could be really good to the point of breaking things and screwing up the entire level 45 talent. Brewing Scribe, he used his spreadsheet to show what would happen if you tossed on some lovely cooldown reduction in addition to haste. Because haste alone with the brew charges actually doesn't give that much. It gives a little bit, but we're talking like 10% haste over a 10-minute fight with no talents or anything. We're talking not quite 2 charges over the entire fight.
Yeah,
like it's kind of
Warcraft devs. They did actually post on Twitter this week that they're considering it. They are looking into it. I'm sure they're going to have to tune it because, like you said, it's either going to be game breaking or meh.
Right. So the cool thing is that would make haste incredibly valuable. It would be a really solid stat, no doubt, especially defensively. The problem is light brewing is already scaling way out of control because of how low its cooldown is. We're talking 11-second brews, incredibly fast, and it's going to get faster with that if it has that cooldown reduction. In addition to that, Black Ox Brew still doesn't scale quite that well, and you'll almost be forced to burn charges on Purify just to get full use out of it because of how currently, as we understand it, Iron Skin Brew works. And then there's Secret Ingredients, which with cooldown reduction actually has the possibility of reducing how many brew charges you have through some weird shenanigans because of how it works. There's a lot of shenanigans going on with it right now, and Brewing Scribe was just kind of threw out there, just rework the whole thing. I'm kind of going with that boat because, and this is me, this is my opinion, you can hate me for it all you want. I don't think the entirely passive talent of the 3, because that's what it is. This is Ascension 2.0, should be so far and away the very absolute best talent out of the 3.
Yeah, passives.
Because right now,
passives are supposed to be the worst. It's supposed to be
right
for
now,
the lazy peoples. I mean, I'm sorry, that's mean, but
in concept, we have a good talent row. In concept, you have a passive option that increases your brew generation. You have an active ability that gives you burst brew, and that if you play well, in theory, would give you the optimal amount of brew. And then you have it's passive, but it changes your gameplay enough to where if you play it well, you should be able to get more brew. In my mind's eye, the active talent and the talent that kind of changes your gameplay that requires you to play a little better would ideally be above the completely passive option. As it stands right now, the completely passive option completely outstrips both of them, and it gets worse with haste, and it gets ridiculously worse when you add the cooldown reduction to haste. Be very interested to see what happens with this going forward, but we're looking at haste potentially breaking a lot of things right now.
All right, well, let's move on to the Mistweaver stats, and we have another flip-flop going on, don't we, Monkey?
Yeah, pretty much. So in Legion, when the alpha first came out, I was looking at the stats that we had, and my first reaction was, wow, Mastery is going to be crazy good. And there's been some back and forth between Mastery, Haste, Crit, and versatility, which ones are going to be better. But, you know, as we've seen raid content come through and we've seen the different talent selections and spell selections that we use in raids, Mastery is just proving itself to be amazing. During the raid testing, I was able to personal log, or we had guild log, private log, some of those bosses, and I had Suplift actually showed me some of his logs, and we did a comparison, And one thing he pointed out that I didn't take notice of at first was that his mastery, he had all mastery gear, I think basically the default gear that you give him when you create a character, and my character had gear that I had acquired from leveling up, and so it didn't have all mastery on it. Granted, it wasn't like all the pieces didn't have mastery, maybe half my pieces had mastery and half didn't, but the difference in healing was something like his did 50% more healing than mine did, and it was, you know, in the millions more healing that his mastery did. It's such a significant contribution to your healing that you just can't ignore it, especially if you're trying to be more efficient or you play a Rising Thunder spec. Mastery is just so good. It's really, really hard to ignore. And the more mastery you have, the more value you place on abilities that, you know, obviously proc your mastery. And so you value less the more expensive abilities like Russian Jade Wind and Essence Font that don't proc your mastery. So mastery actually becomes almost indirectly a mana-friendly stat. Whereas haste isn't, but haste is still really good because haste being your second best stat, it seems. That's my guess at this point. Because you get more ticks on renewing mist, and so it gives you more vivified procs, which is always really good. And crit's just kind of there. Crit's nice, versatility's nice. I think crit's gonna compete with haste, but fall just a little bit short, I think.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see where the math
really
turns
great.
out on that. So the takeaway I get for it is when you're doing your farm runs, start picking up that haste mastery gear.
Yeah, for sure.
All that stuff you've just been sharding as it's been coming in.
Well, if you're talking about like live, I would try and pick up more DPS oriented gear.
Well,
you know,
no,
things
I'm
that'll
just like
swap to
getting ready because you're going to have a few weeks where you're doing, where you're playing in Hellfire with the 7.0 build.
Yeah, for sure.
So you'll want that. And yeah, I'd also pick up your DPS oriented gear for actually leveling up or just go Windwalker. So that'd be easier.
Yeah, for sure. Mastery haste gear is going to be the way to go for,
Yep.
like you said, you know, 7.0 drops, boom, just spam all the masteries. Again, we don't know how that's going to scale. You know, it's always weird that the pre-patch, pre-expansion patch is always really weird. But
Right.
yeah, mastery should be extremely powerful.
And I think you're going to if Warlords is any indication, you're going to go, if you're in Mythic gear specifically, you're going to go until level 108 before you even start replacing that. So especially if you're going to be leveling up via dungeons, I would definitely start stacking that stacking the haste mastery.
I was getting like 800 level gear at like level 105.
Oh, I don't know.
I thought it
Maybe
was
they
replaced pretty
fixed it
quickly.
because I
Yeah,
know
they
leveling in
Very well
Warlords,
could have.
I didn't even replace my first piece of gear, and I was in mainly heroic, not even mythic, and I didn't replace until I was into grand. So
Yeah, it was in the grand I started replacing all my stuff, and then like the legendary cloak literally lasted till heroic dungeon.
Yep.
Doing the leveling on alpha, like you seem to get gear really, really quickly if you did the questing.
Okay. Well, that'll be a good change.
Not sure how the dungeon's going to work, but I don't know. No, obviously the gear's going to last you a while, but the journey from 100 to 110 seems like it's going to be a lot longer than it was from you know, 90 to
you
100.
don't want the Burning Crusade effect of the very first like
I agree.
spider you kill drops a green item that is like 100 times better than your existing
Way
one.
better.
And you also don't
Way
want the
better.
Warlords thing where it's like you have no sense of reward all the way through the leveling process. So if what you're saying is true, when you get to about 105, you start replacing stuff, then you're going to have a good mix there. So
Right.
let's hope. So I want to talk about a couple of community blogs and projects out there. The first one, I really wish you had spelled your name right because this is going to be really hard. All right, Dagnarus Padna. He's in our dojo, and he's doing a lot of Windwalker theory crafting. and he did a large blog post about Windwalker Tier 19. Bonuses for these still seem placeholder to me. I'm not sure, so take it with a grain of salt, but it's still interesting to think about the math, and he's actually got some really nice videos up there that show kind of the different actions per minute you can get. And I'll put the link in the show notes because I don't want to spell that whole thing out. So Dagnaris Padna, thank you for that information, and keep it up. I also want to talk about Misty Tea House. If you guys aren't following her on Twitter, do so right now. Follow her blog right now, especially if you're a Mistweaver, because all of her content is fantastic. She recently put out, she beat me to it actually, I was planning on doing this myself, but you had Mistweaver animations showing off the new animations in Legion. And so that includes the Celestial Breath and some of the new stuff. So definitely check that out.
Yep, for sure. She's always doing stuff, like always.
Yeah, and if you got the money, be one of her Patreons because she gets like UIs and stuff like that, which is friggin' fantastic.
And then one I'd like to also kind of put out there. So you might know him as Mad God or Brewing Scribe on Twitter. He does a lot of Brewmaster stuff. He came up with a very large and very helpful spreadsheet that's been helping us kind of figure out things like haste, mastery breakpoints and how much haste gives this and that, and a lot of really good stuff. He also does a blog. It's at brewingmastery.blogspot.com. I will also link that in the dojo and whatnot. He's like his most recent one was actually fully kind of diving into the haste discussion, including the stuff about how it would affect us if we had the cooldown reduction. So definitely one to check out and kind of keep tabs on as this process goes along.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And I think we've got to put the brew away. I know it's very sad. And I need to hit the button. There's the button.
Bruce.
All right. Well, please rate us on iTunes, Stitcher, subscribe on YouTube, or on twitch.tv. And if you would like to help support the show and make it grow and get even better, you can become our boss by going to patreon.com/monkmeditation. You help guide the future of the show, and you can get some fun rewards along the way. All right, Ari, got any shout out, sir?
Shout out to that bald eagle I saw today when I was out by the lake. That was pretty awesome.
Still on that bald eagle.
I'm confused. What was?
That's a first. That's just oh my goodness.
Monkio, you have any shout outs? Preferably not to a bald eagle or bird.
Shout out to the eagle, man. Shout out to the eagle. We got it for America. I mean,
America.
Please, if you can, just I don't know, go find Donald Trump and peck his eyes out or something. Do something that you were meant to do. You goddamn ugly bird. Shout out to the eagle.
The blue. Let's get this back on track. You have any shout outs here?
Shout out to the Quoropeko for calling out a devil bro who chased me around my map on Monster Hunter. He's a true bro.
All right, and shout out to all these monks that keep running around behind me on the alpha. Keep it up. Keep training hard on the Wandering Isle. And shout out to that bald eagle, man. All right, as part of the monk community, if you have a blog, website, or person you want to see on the show, reach out to us via email at show@monkmeditation.com. The monk community is the best one in the world of Warcraft. We want to showcase it. LeBlue, how can the dojo best reach us?
Reach us at Monk Meditation for the actual show. You follow Chai T at Wow Monk, Air at Air Walker, Monkio at Monkio, and you can follow myself, the wonderful and amazing LeBlue, at Kagarai_LeBlue.
All right, and you can follow that bald eagle at bald_eagle. All right, thank you all for listening. You can watch us live Monday, March 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, midnight UTC at twitch.tv/wowmonk. Also visit monkmeditation.com for links to all the ways to watch and listen to the show. That'll wrap up this episode of Monk Meditation.
May your brews be strong and your heart stronger.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
I rolled a 20.